Welcome to the season 2 of the India Energy Hour podcast. The India Energy Hour podcast explores the most pressing hurdles and promising opportunities of India's energy transition through an in depth discussion on policies, financial markets, social movements, and science. The podcast is hosted by energy transition researcher and author Dr. Sandeep Pai and senior energy and climate journalist Shreya Jai. The show is produced by multimedia journalist Tejas Dayananda Sagar.
Increased heat, drought, wildfires are all linked to climate change. Climate change has altered the physical geography in rural areas by disappearing flora and fauna and other natural habitats that constitutes the livelihood of the local people. In order to understand the ground reality of climate impact in rural areas, we spoke with M Raghuram, senior journalist from Karnataka, Shuchita Jha, journalist at Down to Earth India, and Tazeen Qureshy, independent journalist based in Bhubaneswar, Odisha. Thank you so much, Raghuram, Tazeen, and Suchita, for agreeing to be on this episode. Before we go to the topic, tell us about yourself. Let's start with Suchita. How did you begin your professional journey? Which parts of India do you cover? How did you develop an interest in covering environment related stories?
Hi everybody. Hi sir. Hi
Hi,
Tazeen. Hi.
Tanzeen.
Hi. So I'm Shuchita and I'm currently working with Down to Earth in New Delhi. And earlier I was working with the Times of India in Bhopal. My journey as an environment reporter is pretty new. My career itself is very. It's not a very long span of career. I mean, but now ours is a generation that has good with climate change. It is something that we have heard from the very beginning. And in my school, we used to have a subject called environment education, which also started from a very early age. We started being sensitized uh, about all these things happening, like how ACs are causing chlorofluorocarbons and deplete the ozone layer, and how pollution is being caused by emissions from vehicles and etc. So these are all the studies that were done not very long ago, and they were already included in our curriculum. So it helped sensitize me towards it from a very young age. And after I took up journalism, I really wanted to, maybe do something, at least my bit that I could do. So that was one of the reasons I chose this. And earlier, when I was with the Times of India, I used to cover women and child development also. And despite not environment not being my beat back then, I used to see how it is causing so many problems for women, and especially in rural areas, like due to the lack of water, local bodies drying. Sanitation was a big issue. It was causing deaths. It was leading to malnutrition. So all these things were kind of interwoven, and there was, like sir said, that there is no story but an environment story. I mean, every story can be an environment story if you actually look from the right angle. So, and currently, the speed at which we are going, it is inevitable to not talk about. So maybe I was a little not. I did not start as an environment journalist, but I'm pretty happy to at least be in this field now and talk about such issues. And being in Down to Earth, I am being given this platform and this opportunity to actually talk about really serious issues that are affecting millions and billions of people, especially in our country. So that was pretty much it, because
Story has started.
I have just begun like 2 3 years ago. So yeah. Also, I'd just like to add that when we were growing up, our parents used to tell us a lot of stories about how things used to be in their time, how they used to get a lot of pure food, not chemical induced or fortified food like we used to have, because the natural minerals were depleted and they had to use fortification to actually substitute and make them healthy. So those were a few things that always used to raise a question in my mind as to why this is happening, and whatever are we eating, are we really taking in nutrition, or is it just some sort of a supplement? So ultimately, after covering so many stories, I realized that how important traditional farming was also, and how it was nature friendly, and the all these harmful effects, pesticides and chemicals had already caused us into our body. So maybe if we start raising awareness now, maybe in the next 30 years, something might come out of it.
I am Raghuram. I work in Karnataka on the coastal plains and Western Ghats, that area. I used to work as a staffer for the Hindu, the DNA, and the Indian Express. Now I am freelancing. I am with the 101 reporters. Plus, also I work with the Business Standard for the business news, and I work with Khalij Times sometimes. As I'm a columnist there in Dubai. So now how and why I picked up this environmental journalism is a long story. I will make it as short as possible. See, when I was in Mysore, I was doing my PU. I was a health buff also. I used to run for 4-5 kilometers every day. And then there is a lake. It is called Kukarali Lake. Kukarali Kere is a very nice spot for all the birds, migratory birds and all. Then one day I noticed that there were lots of hyacinth, that kind of weed that grows on the water and destroys the lake if it is allowed to cover it. So it was coming, it was coming, and then it was forming a layer on the water. Then I thought, why is this happening? It is tarnishing the beauty of the Kukarali Lake. Then I contacted my professor in Maharaja's College, Yuvaraja's College, a science college. Why is this happening? Botanist. Then he told it is because of the infusion of sewage water into the lake. So there I picked up the story and did a story for one paper called Star of Mysore. This is in 1979. My first article. They published it, and then there was suddenly the Star of Mysore is a local newspaper, English paper, which picked up the story, and they gave it a good display, and they took photos and all. The staffers went and all, and it gave me a very big boost. So it went on. I started, then I switched on to Hindu, and I came to Mangalore for as a staff correspondent here. And then I started looking around, environmental stories, because that had kindled so much of interest in me. Then I looked around, and there is lots of stories walking around. And for me, environment and stories go together. If there is no environmental angle, I will not do the story. That kind of thing. So what happened was I was a very avid motorcycle rider. I went into different places in Western Ghats where there were roads, there were no roads, and mountains everywhere. I'd been riverbeds and all. I crossed the river on the motorcycle and all that kind of thing, and then I got attached to the photography also. My son was a good photographer. He gave me the camera, and then I started clicking and all. And then one very important story what I did was in the Western Ghats, towards Kerala and Dakshin Kannada, that Karnataka border, there is a plantation of cashew, big cashew plantations, and that all belong to the Karnataka and Kerala Cashew Development Authority. They were spraying a very bad chemical called endosulfan. It's a very poisonous thing. It was sprayed to get rid of the tea mosquitoes. But you know what happened then later? Along with the tea mosquitoes, it killed lots of other entomological species, even the bees, common bees, honey bees. So this was an alarming situation. Nobody had thought about it. And one of the farmers there who used to grow gherkins, gherkins, tondekai, tendlia, he was growing that. And then he told me once, he was a friend of mine, he told me that this is all wilting. All my S1 is wilting. I don't know why. And then when we talked together with some environmentalists, and they opened up the thing, and they are spraying from the helicopter endosulfan, as if they are raining poison. It was happening for at least about 3 years, and then we came to know at the end of 2 years. Then I started writing. and Hindu took it on national level, and all the entomological experts and the fertilizers expert, everybody came there, and then there was a big kind of movement against endosulfan, and mine was the first article to appear on a national scale. So that had a very big impact, and now endosulfan is banned in Kerala and Karnataka. So that thing, gave me another boost. And then it went on, my journey went on. Then I started looking towards this, the corridors, various infrastructure corridors being taken through the Western Ghats to reach Bangalore. So they were oil pipelines, HPCL's oil pipelines, and then MRL, and then power lines, then water and highways. All these corridors are taken through from Mangalore to Bangalore through the Western Ghats, eco-sensitive Western Ghats. And Western Ghats, as you know, this part of Western Ghats has got three very, very eco-sensitive installations. That is, one is Kudremukh National Park and Bhimgarh National Park, and then Nagarhole National. So many national parks and tiger reserves also. So what happened? All these corridors started denuding forests and also bifurcating rivers, trifurcating and quadrifurcating also. Totally total destruction of the Western Ghats. So I started digging into these stories. In the recent, this is the last one I'm going to quote. There are many. This is the last one I'm going to quote. There was a inter-basin river water transfer project called Yattinahole, which after spending 22,000 crores, there's not a drop of water on the other side of the pipeline, and we had opposed it. 22,000 crores, and plus also denuding 75,000 trees. Can you imagine the damage it has done to the Western Ghats? I can send you all that clipping of the story. It's on my Facebook also. The damage was enormous, and not even a drop of water at the end of the pipeline, 280 kilometers away. Even today, even in the rainy season, last rainy season, they started pumping. Not even a drop went. We don't know where the water went. And I keep on doing the stories like this.
So hi everyone, my name is Tazeen. It's so good to be here today to speak to all of you. I cover the eastern state of Odisha, and also I'm very new to this whole concept of environment journalism. So my story is is not very interesting, or something which is a lot of instances to share. What I can tell you as a correspondent from Odisha, I've worked with a lot of channels, also TV channels, where my beat was about covering, the local news, the daily happenings, and one-off stories that you get a chance to do an in-depth story. I had covered environment and climate change as one isolated story someday or the other, but not continue doing it. Neither had got into the whole concept of what it is, in-depth analysis or anything like that. But to say that I was not connected with it is also incorrect, because as a journalist or even as a reader, you keep hearing the term climate change, and I come from a coastal state, Odisha, where the impacts of climate change are there for everyone to see. So you want it or you don't want it, but you keep hearing about it. So there was some kind of a talk, or in my subconscious, I was continuously hearing about it. Stories of conservation, the indigenous communities and their role. But I would say a major turning point sort of came with 101 Reporters, when I started writing for Prominence, their initiative, where we had to talk about stories from grassroots level and then integrate the comments into it. And when I spoke to the editor there, who I was assigned with, I realized there's so much to it, and just on the surface that we see, okay, this is happening. There's destruction of forests. There's so much into it. There's so many layers, and that's what got me interested. Not initially to just write, but initially just to know more about the subject, and that is how I started writing more about it, reading more about it. And then when you are in a state like Orissa, you have the Similipal forest fires, You have this, coastal because of climate change, you have all the natural disasters happening. So there's a lot of connect which you get. And I was really fortunate to get connected with the right people to learn more from them. And I started reporting on environment and climate change, try to make it my focus to know more. And I was again fortunate to have a lot of good editors who told me the layers that I need to find. Environment story can be political also, and is political in a lot of sense, has an economic angle to it also. It can also have an art and culture angle to it also. So these are the layers I tried. And I have been writing on environment for about 2 years now, and still writing. My last story that I did on this topic was on 1 year of Similipal forest fires, the devastating forest fires that had happened in 2021, and how things have changed or not changed. What are the hits and misses? So that was the latest story that I did on this.
Nice, Tazeen.
Yeah, actually, I read that story and also Shuchita's story in Sagar district about the forest revival there, how they turned the
Yeah,
barren
restoration.
land into, yeah,
Yeah, that was one
it was,
good example of forest
Super.
restoration.
yeah. So we'll go to the next question now. What are the different kinds of climate impacts that the rural areas are generally facing? Does local communities in that place, what are the initiatives they're taking? How are they reacting?
See, in our area, region what we call from Goa to Kerala, there's a lots of interest generated about the environmental and all, and also this being close to the sea. What happens is these industries are attracted towards this. There are at least 100 polluting industries in a matter of 220 kilometers of the coastline. From Goa is a mining and chemical region. And then Karnataka has so many polluting industries on the coastal area, and Kerala is just starting up. So what happens is the main impact is on the Western Ghats as well as the Arabian Sea. So all our environmental struggles for environmental sanity, we have to look towards the effects that is generated in the sea. So in our initiatives, not our initiative means not mine alone. There's a whole lot of people involved: the fishermen, the agricultural laborers, and then there are few traditional industries which depend on the environment and the sea. Basically, the fishermen are taking very good initiatives in our area. I think it should be same in Odisha also. So this fishermen very big support. What happens is whatever happens to the sea, environmental degradation, marine environmental degradation affects the fishermen first. So they are the barometers of the damage that is to the sea. They started complaining about the fish depleting, especially the low value, high volume fishes like mackerels and sails. They're migrating because of the change in the quality of the coastal waters. Say about Indian EEZ, the exclusive economic zones is up to 200 kilometers. And you know what happened? These boats were not going to the 200 kilometers. They were small boats, trawlers and all. They're not multi-day fishing. They started finding there was no fish. It was 1993 to 1997 was the degradation started happening. That was when the petrochemical industry started coming into the coastal areas of the country. First time. So what happened? Vijayawada is having one petrochemicals complex, Chennai is having one, but the degradation here started late, but very fast, because the petrochemicals complex what we have now is very high potent. So all the pollutants started going into the sea. So all these fishes that used to bring the local fishermen their bread and butter vanished. The tonnage of the fish catch for local varieties like mackerels and few squids and types of squids and few fast travelers and all those things started getting just vanishing. So whereas in Goa, those fishes were found. In Gujarat, those fishes were found. So then we started thinking about it. Then we started the greater environmental movement for the saving Western Ghats, not Western Ghats, but the Arabian Sea. This gave us a very big boost. Huh? So in the meanwhile, the government cleared another polluting industry, that is, that coal-based thermal plants. That was a big blow to us, the entire coastal areas. Even the aircraft started feeling the heat of the coal. There's a Bajpayee airport is just about 15 kilometers away from even they rerouted their flights. All the flights coming from Dubai and all, they started rerouting it because of the heat. The pilots started complaining and all. So that was done. And the most important thing was treating our waste. Mangalore and these areas are always like very fast growing areas, and they are generating about 300 to 400 tons of civic waste, and they don't know what to do with that. That was one more initiative the local people took. I must congratulate people like Dinesh Holda, and then there are lots of people around like that. I can't name them all, but they did a wonderful, splendid job. And they said they never looked back. They didn't even want anything for themselves. They are so committed. Now we have our own this Mangalore city, the most important coastal city on the western coast. Apart from Mumbai, Panaji. Panaji is a small city. Mangalore is a growing city. Apart from Cochin, Tiruvananthapuram and Ernakulam, Mangalore is the very fastest growing city in the western. So now we have sewage treating plant, and then solid waste management plants, and all this because of the local initiative and the media presence. Media is highly sensitive in Mangalore. In the entire western coast, I must say, Karnataka coast, the 302 kilometers stretch of Karnataka coast, is full of environmental activist journalists. I am one of them. I'm to say that.
So the very prominent attack that can be seen in rural areas, especially that affects the farmers a lot, is the increase in diseases in crops, diseases and pest attacks in crops, which are rising because they are getting more favorable conditions because of climate change. So right now, the latest story I did was on the effects on the destroyed, ruined crop of garlic in Madhya Pradesh because there was a pest called thrips in the crops. So because of this pest and because the heat suddenly rose from March after the hailstorm, it suddenly became very hot. So there was high humidity, high heat, which favored the conditions, and most of the farmers had to suffer huge losses because all their garlic was destroyed. They could not get a good rate for it. So they invested something, they did not get a return. So that is the one of the most common and most prominent things that we are seeing on a very regular basis. Earlier, I cannot very surely say, but earlier there used to be some very sporadic events like that. But every now and then we are hearing like this crop got ruined, that crop got ruined. So every other year it's happening. Then there is, of course, because water bodies are drying up, so there are migration is one of the biggest issues. People are migrating; they're leaving their homelands and living. Even if they have like in Maharashtra, so Maharashtra, everybody knows that sugarcane cutting is a very big occupation there, and because people from there migrate to other cities for cutting sugarcane in at least for 6 months at a time. So this is happening, and earlier the locals there, when I went to Marathwada for covering a story, so the locals there told me that earlier people who had small land holdings, maybe like 1 or 2 acres, they could not cultivate a lot because there was low water. They did not need to migrate. Okay, but now that it is increasing, now that the climate change is increasing and the water table is going further down, even the people who have like 10-12 acres of land, they have to migrate for sugarcane cutting. So the standard of living has fallen drastically. The nutrition level has fallen drastically, which is a direct impact of climate change. Then uh, then I would also like to add here that Oh, so there are some villages that are the local community is also participating in this, like the forest restoration story that we spoke about in theory in Sagar. So I'll just give a gist of the story. That there was a project by it was a project, a combined project by Government of India and Government of Canada to replant a barren land on the hillside in Deori, which is a small village in Sagar district of Madhya Pradesh. So when they planted trees like neem and all those so-called nice trees, they started the plantation. But those trees were not able to survive because there was no water there. So they needed extra care and looking after and water, which was already not there. So these trees couldn't grow. But during this project, one good thing came out that they started stopping the animals from grazing in the area, and they also started stopped human interaction with the forest. So all the underlying roots of the trees, of the sal trees that were there since ages and that had been chopped off, they started reviving. The older trees started growing just because there was no grazing. So earlier, what used to happen was as soon as a tree used to sprout back or used to start the local bovine used to eat those. Now, since the area had been declared as a protected area because of this project, it was not exactly like it's not a protected area, but for that period of time, it was protected by the locals. So they saw that the tree stored itself, it regenerated. And after that, they decided they had also this awakening that okay, we cannot keep using everything for a selfish need. So even today, the people of the local community, they do not collect twigs, they just keep the forest ground clean so that there's no forest fire. But other than that, they do not do any commercial activity from that forest. And their main aim now is to protect that forest and to pass it to the next generation. And because of this forest, the rainfall pattern in that area has become normal again. So this 20-25 year of initiative has, if this small change can lead to a regularizing of rain in such a small area, it was a very low cost project because all they needed was to protect the area from human and animal interaction, and it restored itself. So there was a low cost project, and right now the locals are enjoying themselves because they have the water cycle is back, and they even the local farmers say that the water table has been lifted. Then there are some villages in the Satna and Panna district of Madhya Pradesh who undertake projects of reviving their old water bodies. So all the old and all the nalas and streams like been polluted with plastic and that had been dried up. So they make efforts to clean it. There's some or the other NGO helps them out with it also. But it is mostly by the locals because they initiate that okay, now at this point of time we cannot afford to use more water bodies. So they started reviving their older wells and all these things. And now they started growing their kitchen gardens also. So there was a case study of a woman whose daughter was severely malnourished. So after the well just right beside her house was restored, she started a kitchen garden. And because of the vegetables from from that kitchen garden, she gave her tomatoes, spinach, fruits of all kinds. So because of that nutrition, she could pull her daughter out of malnutrition. So a treatment for which she would have spent like thousands of rupees and probably nothing good would have come out of it. And also this is a very remote village, so going to a doctor and coming back is not an easy task. So she just took matters in her own hands just because she had won. So these local initiatives, they go a long way in ensuring the health of communities as well. So these are some of the efforts that have really inspired me and helped me maybe see hope in a very bleak world, because the stories that we do every day so shows a very negative picture and it is very depressing at times. But these small efforts, they maybe present like a ray of hope to us. Also, just one last point on this, that the Manrega scheme that runs in rural areas. So it is one of the major programs that ensures livelihood, and also the village panchayats can ensure as to what projects they want to take up. So that those in one study I was reading that India's social security program around sequester 249 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent till 2030. So that is a very big initiative. And if these local panchayats also do their own bit, it can be a totally different world.
When we really talk about the impact on rural communities, the first thing is Odisha being a coastal state, the impact is much more visible and clear. Now, I'm going to give you instances to like talk about these individual cases. There's a district called Kendrapada in Orissa. Now, this district, there are villages, it's called Satkadhaya, 7 villages, which got completely washed away. So, this is sea ingression that I'm talking about. The major reason, of course, was climate change, but there were, of course, industrial issues also, which led to it. So the impact now, what happens is these villagers had to be rehabilitated. When they were rehabilitated, their primary source of agriculture that was lost. So when that happened, there's a livelihood issue, and that livelihood issue led to migration. These people started migrating to different cities, mostly down south. So this is one of the case studies that I'm talking about. Similarly, if we talk about a little interior region, when let's say we are talking about Asia's second largest biosphere reserve, this is Similipal. When we talk about that, there's been the climate change has led to a shift in rainfall pattern. Now, if you look at Odisha's traditional rainfall pattern, it has been changing over the years. Now, due to this change, there's been a lot of imbalance. So when the rainfall, so a lot of forest fire is dependent on the climate. The studying the microclimate is very important when we talk about forest fire. And that is one of the reasons why, we witnessed a devastating forest fire last year because there was no rainfall activity. There's sporadic rainfall activity in the month of January, February, which sort of stops these fires. And this is because of climate change. And when we talk about forest, there are indigenous communities living inside the Similipal Tiger Reserve and also in the periphery. And they were directly impacted. So again, if I again come back to coastal region, there's another Puri, of course, is a town which is very famous for its religious significance. Now, there was a project that was initiated and it got a lot of media coverage, which talked about how that city has become first in India to supply clean, potable water to all its households. So what has basically happened is you can just open the tap in any household in Puri town and start drinking water. So that was the thing that was reported. But when I went to cover that story, I realized one of the reasons why this is happening is because the ground level, the groundwater of Puri was completely exhausted. And this was one of the reasons they had to take this project up and supply water. So they had to create a structure, dam sort of a structure, and filter water and supply directly to the people's homes, primarily because the groundwater there, was almost completely exhausted. So if you look at the impacts, it varies. When you talk about the coastal side, it varies. It's different for when you talk about the interior areas. But if you see, the major impacts would be livelihood issues, then migration. And Sucheta also talked about diseases, which I want to add on. Now, again, these shift in rainfall and the climate shift has also made the environment very conducive for certain parasites, which has also resulted in areas like Koraput, Malkangiri, where there's a rise in cases of malaria, Japanese encephalitis. This is because the environment has become really conducive for such things. And these are the direct impacts that you feel and you can see for yourself that is happening along. Now, having said that, a lot of onus on the mitigation measures, you can give it to the local communities. I won't directly say the panchayat for that matter, because the village committees, I feel here, are doing much more than an organized administrative structure. And to mention and not to forget the role of women here. So especially in the indigenous communities. Now in Nayagarh, in Mayurbhanj, these are the two districts that I'm talking about, where women actually hold sticks and go to the forest to sort of conserve them. So basically, if there is somebody coming to cut trees, they threaten them with their sticks. In the local language, it's called Thingapali. So they basically threaten them and they drive them away. And this has actually happened in Nayagarh. I can tell you, there's a village called Gunduri Badi. Now, it's very difficult to keep the exact statistics, but as far as I've spoken to environmentalists there and activists, almost 500 acres of forest land had been regenerated just because of a group of women, and most of them very elderly, who would every morning and evening walk to the forest and, you know, threaten anybody who comes to cut trees. And the very simple logic, it also happens in other districts. It's not just restricted to Nayagarh. And the simple logic why they basically ask women to go up front is because they say the easiest thing is, if a man comes to cut tree, he will not use violence on a woman. He'll think twice. But when a man goes away, obviously there's a physical tussle that can be involved. And for that simple reason, women take a lot of initiative. Also, they think it is their onus. It's their responsibility. It is the forest which gives them livelihood, which helps them earn money. So it's their onus to protect the forest. And culturally, of course, we all know that indigenous communities have a lot of relation with the forest. So that is one thing which is very interesting. And the other thing, while again I was doing the Similipal forest fire stories, where I realized that this was a survey done independently by an NGO, which had found out that when the fire had happened last year in Similipal Reserve, the fire points had actually happened in areas around villages which had not got their rights, community forest rights or any kind of titles. And the areas where village were given some kind of a responsibility or some kind of an onus, even if there was a fire point, it was extinguished in, let's say, a couple of hours, 3-4 hours at max. But at the other places, it kept burning for, let's say, 8 hours, 9 hours, which virtually led to the entire area getting burnt down. So and they have a map actually which shows those points. So that basically suggests the kind of role the village committees have. And when I spoke to the local people out there, also one realization and observation that came in, apart from the measures that the district administration has, their own policies, which is done by the village committee, and it's not written law or anything, it's an unwritten rule, where they basically, there are a lot of laws. If you basically spot a fire, a person has to immediately shout and alert the villagers. And every villager, when I say every villager, it is their rule. Every villager has to rush to the point and try to douse that fire. You can leave out sick people, sick elderly people, or women if required, if there is a valid reason. And all others have to be on spot to douse the fire. If you don't, there'll be a fine implemented. So the community itself has a lot of such rules and regulations which they implement, and which is sort of really helping contain all the spread and all of that. And in Odisha specifically, the reason why I keep mentioning women, because they have a major role to play in most of the in most of these measures that they take. So yeah, these were some of the examples, just to talk about the initiatives. And if I can, I'm sure another last instance which I mentioned will be known to a lot of people. Mangala Jodi, which is a place which is a story I also did for 101 Reporters, which is a place where a lot of people, it used to be a poaching land. There are a lot of migratory birds that come to that place every winter. And the inhabitants of that villages and the surrounding villages would hunt them and get a lot of money out of it. And the whole story is the presiding deity. So the local deities also play an important role. So once what happened, somebody who was really concerned about the environment said, let's do one thing. Let's take a pledge in the name of local deity, which is Kalijai, Ma Kalijai, which is, where the Chilka Lake is. And let's not kill or let's not hunt these birds. And this is what happened. They just took a pledge. And from that day, the poachers became, conservationists. They stopped anybody who would enter. They would take their boats in, deep into that area where migratory birds, so they could identify, because they were hunters, they could identify where they would get those migratory birds. They would literally keep a vigil, and anybody who would come, they would stop them from hunting the birds. And now Chilka has been getting a lot of record number of migratory birds every year. So a lot of this, of course, a district administration had a lot to do with it. They sort of encouraged and did all these awareness programs. But a lot of initiatives that have been taking place, the onus is on the village committees and a lot on women as well.
There's one more interesting thing I would like to add. I mean, it is based on what Tazeen said. In like I spoke to the Odisha forest officials while they were, on the for the Jagannath Yatra, when the wood with the logs were being taken. So in that during that there was an observation that was made that said that most of the wood for the that had come from the local from out of the forest, like TOFs, trees outside forest instead of the forests. So when I spoke to the people there and the Odisha people, they told me that this time most of the wood came from the forest because came from the private landowners instead of the forest, because the wood had already depleted in the forest and there were conservation efforts going on. Uh, During this conversation, the circle officer, he's Mr. Mohapatra, Dr. Manoj Kumar Mohapatra, who is the IFS. He said that they use a wood called dharua, if I am pronouncing it right. So the dharua wood, which is used for the logs of the Jagannath, Lord Jagannath, it is they have observed that it is slower to grow now, because as the climate is changing and as the water bodies as the Mahanadi water is depleting, they have to find other fertile areas. So because of this, the dharua tree, it takes 80 years to reach a girth of 6 feet. So 6 feet is the maximum girth, the minimum girth that they need for making the wheels. So he said that in the next few years, we will observe that because of climate change, this 80-year period of time, it takes 80 years to reach that 6 feet girth. Now, in a few years, we are seeing that the growth has slowed down and it might start taking it 100 years to reach that 6 feet girth. So this is something at a very ground level, which was observed by the forest officials because of climate change. And another thing, there's like Tanzeen said, that there's a village in Balaghat district of Madhya Pradesh that has not seen a single forest fire in the last 150 years. I did that story for 101 Reporters while I was freelancing last year. So in that is the only, because the villagers take responsibility for the forest. It is not a protected forest. It is not even on forest land. It is a revenue area which is forested, which has trees. But they take so much interest in protecting the forest that they clear out the leaves as soon as right after autumn. They make sure that all the leaves, all the dry grass in that area is cleared out, and they use that grass to also thatch their roofs, and it is also used for some rites from like religious rituals. So they ensure that they do not make it into a commercial activity, but just to keep the forest floor clean so that there's no fuel for the fire. So that is also, yeah, like one of the big initiatives that some local communities are taking.
I would instance is that when this Indian Navy was bombarding, it was treating the last archipelago island called Netrani. It's near Bhatkal. Okay, they were using that last archipelago island as a target practice, and there lots of degradation, because that is the last island in that area which had formed after the sea has taken over the land of Western Ghats. Okay, I did a story on that, and the local fishermen, even before I did the story, the local fisherwoman, they revere that Netrani island as something God given. Okay, and they do pujas once after the monsoons. Every monsoons, a flotilla of people go there and then do pujas, and all women. Now that was being bombarded. I took few fisherwomen and fishermen in a boat, and I saw big shells, about what Navy bombardment this one. They were all there. Some of them are not exploded. Some areas are full of this toxic dust. Comes out of the fillings of the shells and all. So what happened was I was aghast, and I came to know that there are many marine and this avian species that are extinct. Only it is found here. That is called white-breasted eagle. The only place in India and Southeast Asia that it is found. So they were destroying it. Then I went onto the island with the help of a fisherman, this one, and then I saw the damage and did a story for DNA. Next day, Additional Director General of Police, CID Forests, Mr. KSN Chikkerur called me. He had filed a writ petition against the Indian Navy based on my article. He told me, Raghu, I have full faith in your writing. Please support me in this. And he hired one advocate called Deepak, who is also an environmental advocate. So they won the case. The Navy stopped. But not forever. They again started. But then the High Court of Bangalore, taking my article as the evidence, they summoned Western Range Commander Malhotra. They told, with one stroke of pen, they said, leave alone Netrani. Just 3 words, leave alone Netrani. One order they gave. That's the end of bombardment. So these are the few stories, that comes from the locals. How I got the whiff of it? When I was there is a nice hotel in Bhatkal. I was driving from Goa. I was riding from Goa on my Enfield. I stopped over for this one biryani hotel by the coast. I asked the fisherman, the guy there who served food, can you give me some fish? He said, sir, fishing is stopped now. We don't have fresh fish. I can give you a week back fish. I said, no, why you have stopped? Then he told the Navy has ordered not to fish in Bhatkal and 20 kilometers around. This is 19 nautical miles from Bhatkal. So they had stopped. When the Navy asks them, you can resume fishing, they will start. Otherwise, no work. They're just loitering around, drying fish and whatever is little what they can spend or they can earn, they do it. So this local fisherman gave me the link to the event. So the local fishermen and the local people, they have their ears to the ground. They know what's happening. So whatever hotshot writers we are or not, or what kind of environmental journalists we are, it all comes from the people, basically, the local guys and girls. And how they fight it? They fight for their livelihood. 20 days of bombardment of Netrani village, what kind of loss the fishermen undergo there? They said because of this, every month, every 45 days, 20 days, no fishing, they go become casual laborers somewhere. They have their boats, they can't fish, they go and carry loads to the trucks. These kind of things are happening. So whatever the initiative we do, unless there is local people, we can't do a thing about it.
That's really inspiring. It's really good that I'm hearing those initiatives happening in rural areas. And the one which Shuchita and Tazeen was saying that I've read it in 101. Like I've gone through those stories, and it's really inspiring because women taking initiative and they think that that forest and those natural resources are their livelihood. If that is gone, they are gone. They don't have anything to do. That is their thing. So that's why they, in whatever manner they can, they try to protect them. The thing is, like, the communities are doing these initiatives to do not to protect environment and the things. So what is the local government or panchayat is initiatives are doing? When you are covering any stories in the past, have you come across what was their response, and are they really thinking about environment, the local panchayats and governments there? What are the steps regarding this?
The local governments, they have a mandate. The local self-governments, be it the city municipal council, municipal corporation, the city corporations, nagar panchayats, even the state government and the district administration, they have a mandate. Before taking up any project that has got environmental impact on the environmental aspect, they will have to call for a public hearing, which is not happening. But after the petrochemicals industry started coming on the coastal areas, not alone in Karnataka, even in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Odisha, West Bengal, and Gujarat, Maharashtra, all these places, the district administrations have been given, have been empowered to hold public meetings. Whatever the public hearing gives a verdict, they will have to recommend to the MOEF, Ministry of Forests and Environment. So this has been happening regularly, because in one case, and the Green Tribunal also is there. They are also making their presence felt nowadays. In one particular issue, there is one forest area. This is the last lung area of the coastal city of Mangalore. It is something closer to 25 acres, lush green forest. Even the sunlight doesn't come in there. That kind of thick forest. It's in a place called Padil. But one foolish officer, deputy commissioner, about 3 regions back, he orders that the old building of deputy commissioner's office in Mangalore city has to be vacated and should make way for a new building, spacious building, and all the facilities included. So he chooses this 25 acres of land. Without even a public hearing, they started cutting down the trees. And one of my friends who was in Times of India, he told me, "Hey, Raghu, see, this kind of thing is happening. You call yourself an environmental activist. Why don't you do something story on that and give me a copy of that also? So I will also publish it." So it is mutual. So I went next. I think they are already happily cutting down. They got saw and all, chainsaw they call it. They are happily denuding the forest. They took the photograph and just. Then suddenly there was no public hearing. The deputy commissioner was supposed to hold a public hearing. He didn't. So then their work stopped. The Green Tribunal came in. A few environmental activists also started raised objection in Green Tribunal, and the MOEF local area and all those things happened. They stopped. But then the person who is in the government, he went against the Green Tribunal stay to the High Court of Karnataka. High Court cleared it. So now 45% of the forest there is denuded. The land is degenerated. We see lumps of these young birds. They're about not yet ready to fly. They're all huddled there in a corner. And these things are ghastly things are happening there. And the deputy commissioners who are supposed to be the custodian of environment also and the public interest, they are not active. It is not only here, it happened in Manipal also, Udupi district, and even in Karwar, where they are building a Dakshin Kannada, Uttar Kannada Zilla Panchayat office. And they say we have compensatory forests. Whatever they cut it here, they plant somewhere else. We don't know whether they plant or not. Are they planting the same species, the endemic species? We don't know that. And suddenly there is changes. The heat is rising, the rainfall is coming down in volumes. Whom to blame? And for reason or no reason, entire cities roads are being concretized. And generation of heat, these things, the local administrations will have to take care, which they are not.
Yeah, so like Raghu sir said, some I have also in my travels, because working with Down to Earth, it is a very good opportunity that I get to travel across the country, and so far I have visited 4 states. So when I was in Rajasthan, in Jaisalmer, so basically I was doing a story on the Great Indian Bustard, which is the state bird of Rajasthan. It is also called Godawan. So it is on the verge of extinction, and it is on the verge of extinction because the grasslands there are being denuded, and they are being occupied by the solar plants and wind farms to generate electricity. Now, as part of the CFR fund of the big companies who are putting up their projects there, they are supposed to do some afforestation of the same species in the villages wherever they are occupying the land. But this is not happening. And also, there's a biodiversity small community called biodiversity community of every village, which works in collaboration with the panchayats. And all this CFR responsibility to restore the environment is supposed to happen along with along with that committee of the panchayat. But the punches themselves, they are unaware of what is happening. They see that they cut down the trees of khejdi, which is a bushy, which is a thorny kind of a tree, and camels eat that tree. Khejdi and tenti, and they're all local species. They cut down those trees and they plant palm and neem and all those things which cannot survive in a desert-like environment, semi-arid environment. They cannot survive. Now, here two things are happening. First, even if the companies are trying, they are not doing it in accordance with the panchayats, because they would have helped them guide that what all trees should be planted here, what is beneficial for our environment. Nothing thrives here, thrives in Rajasthan. So that is one of the local species. There are berries in another, the tenti that they have another name for it. There are berries of which they make pickles. So that is their local food. So now if you're planting neem, how are they going to eat it? So panchayats are being overruled like crazy. And this is very unfortunate, because they have on paper, they have enough power to stop whatever is happening in their villages, all these anti-environmental activities, but they are not being heard. And recently there was a test on the Hasdeo project of Chhattisgarh, where Hasdeo mining project, where the Parsa block was given it was given the second stage clearance by the state government for mining. But here again, it's a very large forest, and it will be denuded if this continues. And no gram sabha, it affects 6 villages, whole mining project, and none of gram sabhas was ready to let this. But the bits and the local administration, the district administrators, they had a floor meeting with the judges, and they got consent form. So apparently, so after that, it got cleared for the second stage clearance as well, because the punches were pressurized to give their consent when they did not want. So this is something. I mean, for this, I would really like to see an initiative where the panchayat is being heard and some positive things have come out. Although they, like I told you about the mega thing, so they have that much power that they can create so many activities like restoration of old water bodies, of forests, of providing employment, of going back to their local seeds instead of the hybrid seeds that use more water. But they also need backing from the higher authorities as well, because if they are being overruled by the higher authorities who are actually supposed to protect their interests, then of course they are helpless.
I also second Raghu's in this matter. Like, for example, I'll tell you about one story. This is in Kalahandi district of Odisha, and this I'm talking about Kallapat Wildlife Sanctuary. This is about last year, when what happened was that the government had done soil testing of that area, and had also announced fresh auction of mines all of this process had started without any Gram Sabha being held. Now, the government in its defense had said the Gram Sabha will happen because now it was just a process that had begun. But the villagers said, when we are going to, object to it, why not first talk to us and, take our point? But this is what happened, and there was police presence everywhere. And this I'm talking again is a very interior part, so it becomes also very difficult for people from the main city to reach there, and that is also an advantage for the stakeholders who are involved. And so this is what eventually, of course, it went to, it was a legal battle, and it was anyway stayed, the fresh auction of mine. But what I'm trying to do is this process of Gram Sabhas, and which a local administration would have a lot of part to play in it, but again is neglected. And I think the best example to talk about this is, the POSCO agitation. Everyone has really heard about it when this Korean steel giant visited Odisha, and they wanted to establish an industry, and they had a lot of demands because they also wanted to build a port, and the industry, of course. There were a lot of protests, women and children again taking the center stage of that protest. And, the police brutality were actually recorded on cameras. Somehow that protest got a lot of media attention, and the POSCO finally exited the whole place. And there's another project that has come in same village. I'm talking about Dhinkia. Dhinkia was new in news again in December when there was police presence. Now, I went to cover this. This is a small village that I'm talking about, which is very close to the seashore, and there's a beetle vine cultivation that goes on there. And this has been going on for ages now. For generations, they've been engaged in that, and they get a lot of money to sustain just from beetle vine cultivation. So they were able to thwart the POSCO project. But again, when the general project is happening this time, the beetle vines have been destroyed, and the villagers had gathered to sort of go to that place when their beetle vines were being destroyed. They wanted to go and stop it. The police have literally lathi charged them. And I went to that place, and I've seen it from my own eyes that the elderly people with bandages, unable to walk, and a lot of them didn't even want to speak on record because they had been threatened. So for example, I spoke to X and I published their quote with their name. The police go and actually beat them, take them out, detain them, arrest them, and they just told me about a lot of instances like that. So it was even very difficult because you put anyone. So when you talk about the local administration, police, of course, becomes a part of it. And when you are sort of trying to do this to people who are protesting for their own rights, you can see the kind of involvement that they have. So I think it's when it comes down to the administration, there are a lot of stakeholders involved, and which makes it very difficult. But had what the village communities and these indigenous communities been doing for the environment, had that been taken care of, I'm sure we would have been in a much better position than we are, now. The kind of support they would have got in Sundargarh, for example, the land rights, Nayagarh that I was talking about, where women are conserving forests. A lot of them tell me that we have sent applications to get the land rights, to get the ownership, but it's just lying there. They would just put any, it's difficult to get sort of the documents. Also, documentation is also difficult in villages, so they would just place any condition and say that no, this cannot happen, and that is a major challenge. So at a time when these people need support to sort of make things better for us, a lot of time they just have to receive the backlash, and they're always at the receiving end. So this is unfortunate, which I think is not just in the case of one particular state, but which is happening all around. And like I said, it's just not, the onus is not on the district administration, but there are a lot of stakeholders at the national and national level involved. And it's unfortunate, but that's the truth.
What do you think on a larger scale, like the governments, like state governments and central governments, should ensure? What are the steps they should take to focus on rural specific programs regarding environment?
See, the state and central government, they go by the rule book, right? Initiatives are much sorted when it comes to environmental protection as going by the rule book. But that is not happening. Why is it not happening? Because of the political overtones for every activity, be it development, environmental or social, economical, whatever. It is not happening. Whether we accept it or not, it is not happening. And this is happening, this apathy is due to the inactiveness. There is not many activists nowadays in rural areas. People have to go from the city and perk them up. Okay, the cities have their own problems. You see, I told you about this problem of honeybees vanishing from Western Ghats. It is thickly populated, not thickly populated. Actually, it is area in Sulya, which is nearer to the Western Ghats. Okay, on the other side, Madikeri, there were no honeybees for 10 years. So what happened was, then there were some beekeepers in Puttur, next to Sulya, Puttur. They took the colonies of bees, honeybees, and planted it there in the in Sulya area where it was affected by the endosulfan. Here, the government starts objecting because the Kerala lobby, the communist lobby there, they objected to the Kerala government for repopulating, the Karnataka people repopulating the bees there. They said it's a commercial activity and they can't cross the political borders, political jurisdiction, what they call it. They were looking at a different angle. They were looking at losing their prominence over the local people and over the local people against the people from Karnataka. The local people are puppets in the hands of the political ideology. Be it Congress, leftists, rightists, or centrists, whatever you call them, they are being colonized. This is what is preventing from the state and central government taking the right initiatives as per the rule book. This is what I found during various stories I did for not only environment, but for other reasons also.
Totally. I would just like to add on this that whenever a state government or a central government brings a project in an area, suppose we are talking about, like I gave you the example of Great Indian Bustard dying, the loss of habitat for the state bird of Rajasthan because of projects like solar parks and wind, its electrocution because of the high tension wires. So that is a much talked about project in the country at present. But again, it was okayed by the state government, it was okayed by the central government, and the cases being filed and this and all those things going on. But any such project, when it comes to a village, I would just want that, okay, fine, nobody is against development. We know that we need energy and we know that we have to reach net zero. So all these targets, of course, are in line with India's bigger targets to, be a greener country, to sequester more carbon, to produce less pollution, and of course, all these things. But when it reaches a village, it destroys the livelihood of those people. And they are then forced to do odd jobs, like, work as a guard in that solar company, which actually uprooted his whole family, or work as in an adjoining city where they have to struggle for 2 meals a day. Here they had a lot of land where they could have, keep camels, keep cows, get them to graze, earn from their milk, make handicrafts out of hair. So there's a whole rural economy, and every state of India has its own separate rural economy because it's a diverse country. So we cannot expect the same thing to happen in a village of Kerala that is happening in Jaisalmer, or something. Something different would obviously be happening in a village of Himachal Pradesh. So any livelihood economy that is happening is a lifestyle of the people that is also preserving the local culture there. Because camel milk is a very important part of Jaisalmer, and we they offer it to tourists who come to Jaisalmer. There's also an institute in near Bikaner, which is with that makes ice creams and stuff. But where did it start? It started from the local people. But if you will hinder progress of the local people, if you will prevent them from utilizing their own resources just because you need to capitalize it for some bigger gain, that is not done. You have to ensure the local people get their livelihood continues uninterrupted, their livelihood, their lives get better. And if there's a energy project that project has been set up in Jaisalmer and that will provide electricity to the citizens of Delhi, it is our responsibility also to ensure that their lives are not destroyed because of that project. So those little factors have to be kept in mind everywhere and anywhere, whenever they bring any, I mean, be it mining, be it green energy, be it nuclear, be it whatever, they have to ensure that the locals don't suffer, because this is happening all across the country, and those are the biggest stakeholders who can actually help in reversing climate change, who can actually help in protection of local species, of micro environments, of climate change. So they, because their local livelihood is based on that economy, they know how to utilize it without exploiting it. So you cannot destroy their whole life because of one project. So that is something that all governments, I mean, not just our state governments, every country in the world should ensure that the locals are not negatively impacted if you are bringing in a development project.
I agree to actually all the points that have been made. Um, it all boils down to the fact that how effectively things are implemented as well. Uh, if you talk about mining, for example, we've all known about over exhausting the mining capacity from different mines, and now there are a lot of rulings, especially coming from Odisha, where they're imposing a lot of hefty amount on particular uh, on particular companies for over exhaustion and all of that. But it just boils down to the fact that it could have been avoided. Couldn't have been without knowledge. It's just not possible. So it just boils down to the fact that we have not really got the involvement of the local communities, because if I'm trying to talk about one particular community, I'm trying to talk about the development of their community, trying to give them livelihood opportunities. To not have them in the discussion doesn't make sense, and which is what is happening at a lot of places. And unfortunately, it cannot get the kind of media attention that perhaps something in a metro city would get, and that is why it just gets away as well, without any public knowledge. So the first thing would be to, involve the communities whose life has been impacted the most, and get them into the dialogue process, and understand their concerns, and then maybe take decisions. And this is perhaps what almost every activist would also agree. And the second thing is, when we talk about environment, there are a lot of other stakeholders we discussed are involved. So there has to be a sort of collaboration when we of different departments, of different stakeholders, when a decision is taken. For example, there's a green agriculture project that is going on, and there are 5 landscapes in India where this project is going on. The main idea why this project had started was basically to sort of collaborate different departments, concerned departments, and take decisions that will not impact the environment. For example, it's when you talk about farming, there's agriculture, there's an environment, there's forest. So all these departments come together under this project, and this is basically a collaboration that happens. Now it started off with a lot of it got a lot of interest, and I'm not sure, I've not followed it up, so I don't know where the project lies right now. But the answer to this would be one effective implementation of cooperation between the existing stakeholders and the existing departments, that directly impact the environment. And so I think these 3 points would be really important when you want to talk about the kind of change that can be effected, at least now, even if it's late. But yeah, at least better to do it now than late.
There's just one more point that I would like to add, that there's a rule for, there's a law for protection of forests. There's an act for it. There is no act for the protection of grasslands or protection of other open natural ecosystems like swamps or marshes. So okay, we declare them as like a Ramsar site or something. So, but that happens very late. But not just those. There are local ecosystems that are considered as barren lands. But barren land was a very colonized term that was given to the places which supposedly, according to the colonizers, were not productive. But they have their own ecosystem, they have their own microclimate. So you cannot expect to make everything useful according to your own terms. Being useful doesn't have to fall in your definition of useful. So if it is a grassland, if it is a grazing ground for cattle, if it is which is the habitat of lizards or desert cats or such birds like the great Indian bustard and etc. And there are so many there are so many species of birds that are actually found in the grasslands. There are birds that nest underground instead of building nests on trees. So if all these grasslands are termed as barren lands, and when they are given up for a project to make them useful, this only destroys the habitat. So this barren land term has to be done away with. This wasteland term, sorry, not barren, wasteland term has to be done away with for the protection of these open natural ecosystems. So that is something the state and central government should work on.
Thank you so much, everyone, for accepting this invite and joining us in this episode.
Thank you, Tejas. It was very nice meeting Tazeen and Raghuram sir and to you. So thanks for including me, and it was a pleasure to be.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to Tazim, Suchita, and Tejas.
Thank you for listening to the India Energy Hour. Subscribe to this channel to never miss an update. To drop us a feedback, visit our website or write to us at theindiaenergyhour@gmail.com. We are on Twitter. You can follow at TIEH_podcast and get in touch with the two hosts at Shreya_Jai and at Sandeep Pai with double I.